A lot of what I talk about here on the channel is how to earn a ton of points and the best credit card setups to do so, but none of that matters if you never use those points. So rather than strictly talking about the cards themselves, today I want to focus more on how I'm maximizing, in my own terms, each of the points currencies that I earn in and how my strategy has shifted over the past few months. Fair warning, my new approach is definitely not optimal to some, but I really don't care about that because it's already saved me thousands of dollars in value that I was wasting before, and I want to help y'all save that money as well. Let's start with my favorite points currency and one that I can never seem to earn enough points with, Chase Ultimate Rewards. Just like with every other lender I'll talk about today, I want to briefly touch on how I actually earn enough points to use them in the first place. And with Chase, my biggest strategy to earn Ultimate Rewards points is by getting as many welcome offers with them as possible, specifically on their Ink business cards. A lot of folks out there seem to think that Chase's cards are strictly for beginners because maybe their earning rates aren't the most competitive, but that couldn't be further from the truth when you expand your reach into their business lineup. Right now, I have the Chase Ink trifecta of the Chase Ink Cash, Chase Ink Unlimited, and Chase Ink Preferred, and I was lucky enough to lock in all-time high welcome offers on all three of those. So with the Chase Ink Cash and Unlimited, I earned 90,000 points for $6,000 worth of spend in 3 months, and on the Ink Preferred, I earned 120,000 points for $8,000 worth of spend in that same time frame. But before I lose too many of y'all here, even if you don't want to go to the business side, despite their super high welcome offers, you can still get a ton of value from their personal Ultimate Reward point earning cards thanks to their really lenient welcome offer rules. Yes, I know that they have the infamous 524 rule that won't allow you to get approved for any Chase cards if you've been approved for 5 or more personal cards in the last 24 months with any lender. But at the same time, you have the ability to get multiple welcome offers on each Chase card, even if you've already had them multiple times. Like on the Freedom cards, if you wait 24 months since you last got a welcome offer on each of them, you can get them again. And with the Sapphire cards, you have to wait 48 months. And while, yes, you do have to be under 524 to get those offers again, and you'll inevitably get annoyed by it at some point, I still think it's a much better rule than something like Amex pop-up jail because you know exactly what you have to do to be in good graces with Chase, but with Amex, they can kind of throw you in it whenever you want. My second strategy for earning more Chase points is pretty obvious, and that is by putting spend on their cards outside of the welcome offer period. In reality, I only ever put spend on 2 of their credit cards, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is my daily driver, mainly for dining purchases, as well as the Chase Ink Unlimited, which is a card I use for my miscellaneous business expenses. I'm not going to go super in depth on how I use each of my cards in this video since I just covered that in a recent one, so if you're looking for that information, make sure to check that one out after this one. But before we get into how I actually use these points, I do think it's relevant to mention here that I have the privilege of earning a lot of referral points on not only my Chase cards, but with the other lenders we'll talk about in this video as well. And that's all thanks to y'all just wanting to support the work that I do here on YouTube, which I'm extremely grateful for. And to be completely transparent with y'all, just to kind of let you know how this YouTube business works right now, the credit card affiliate space is really jacked up right now, and the income from it is super inconsistent. So to make up for some of that lost income, I've been cashing out a lot of my referral points, meaning that they don't necessarily factor into this travel strategy equation today. No matter if you care about referral links or anything I just said, there is still a lesson to be learned here. If you're the type of person who knows exactly how much you'll be traveling and how many points you need to do so, if you see that you have an excess at any given time, it's worth considering cashing out some of those points if you get at least a 1 cent per point value to move more towards that hybrid strategy and actually put your points to work rather than letting them waste away. Not only have I done exactly that by redeeming a ton of points for this MacBook Pro, but I also recently did it with another lender, which we'll get into later. No matter what cards I have in my wallet, there is one tool I'll always use when abroad, and if you haven't heard of it yet, it's going to completely change the way you travel. Airlo is the world's first and leading eSIM store that lets you download digital data packs for over 200 countries and regions. Why would you need that? Well, if you've ever landed in a foreign country and realized that you have 0 phone service, you've had to scramble to find a SIM store at the airport, or got hit with a massive roaming bill whenever you got back home, Airlo solves all of that. All you have to do is install the eSIM for the country you're traveling to in the Airlo app before you fly, and the second that you land, boom, you're already connected. There's no changing of physical SIM cards or being forced to switch your phone number. You keep everything intact, and Airlo does everything in the background. To me, the key is how affordable it is, not only compared to other eSIM providers, but especially when compared to your current phone service provider. Before Airlo, I'd try to keep my phone service off and just use Wi-Fi to answer calls and texts and stuff like that, but that's extremely inconvenient. And now, instead of fussing with all of that or wasting hundreds of dollars even on a single trip with roaming charges, I use Airlo for a fraction of the cost. Over 15 million travelers trust Airlo already, and I completely understand why. It makes your trip smoother, safer, and honestly just a lot less stressful. Not having to worry about whether or not you can call an Uber when you land at the airport, contact your friends and family back home, or even something as simple as access your maps is huge. So if you've got any international travel planned, I'd highly suggest that you try out Airlo, and by using my promo code on screen, you'll get $3 off of your first eSIM purchase. I'll leave the link for that at the top of the description as well as in the pinned comment so you can let them know that I sent you, and that further supports me as well as the sponsors of this channel. And with that being said, let's get back into the content. So on top of earning the most amount of points with Chase, I also redeem the most points with them. And I know it's not a super popular method, but the biggest way I do so is through the 50% boost I get in the travel portal using my Chase Sapphire Reserve. A lot of people like to avoid travel portals, and I completely get it. It can be extremely annoying if you've had a flight changed or canceled because then you have to deal with Chase as well as the airline. But in my experience with using them over the past couple of years, I've had many more good experiences with the Chase portal than bad. And considering I get more value with them than I do with any of the alternatives for my specific use cases, I'm completely okay with those small annoyances. Before I got the Chase Sapphire Reserve, the max amount of value I could get through Chase's travel portal was 1.25 cents per point through my Sapphire Preferred. And one of my biggest use cases for Chase points in the way I travel was with Southwest. And back then, the average cent per point value of a Southwest mile was 1.4. So considering I could only get 1.25 through the portal with the Preferred, I would opt to transfer my points directly to Southwest. Now that I have the Chase Sapphire Reserve and Southwest points are getting devalued a bit, not only do I get a higher redemption rate at 1.5 cents per point through the portal, but since Southwest treats that as a cash booking on their end, I also will earn Southwest miles for that booking. I'll earn qualifying flights towards status, and I'm still able to use my Southwest Companion Pass. So it's like a win-win-win-win, I guess. And that's exactly why I'm so fond of using their portal for my domestic redemptions. Outside of the portal, though, most people would probably assume that I use my Ultimate Rewards points for high-class international flights, since that's where they're best utilized. But I've actually never done that, and that's because I opt to use them for Hyatt hotels instead. Chase is one of only 2 lenders with direct transfer access to Hyatt, so of course I want to take advantage of that. And it's honestly very easy for me to get 2+ cents per point for most of my Hyatt bookings. So when you combine that with my 1.5 cent per point redemptions through the Chase portal, on average, I'm getting pretty dang close to 2 cents per point for all of my Ultimate Rewards points, which is exactly what most people value them at anyways. My second, I guess not most used currency, but most valued is Bilt Rewards. As most of you already know, there's really only one way to earn a good amount of Bilt Rewards points, and that's by using the Bilt MasterCard. There's another more secretive method that you can use by linking your other credit card accounts to your Bilt Rewards account to earn bonus points with their neighborhood partners, but personally, my spending habits don't align with that very much, so it's kind of a null benefit. And truthfully, I just don't earn many Bilt points at all in a given year. It's obviously not because I don't like Bilt. I just told you they're my second most valued currency. It's just that I don't really ever use their credit card. At this point in my credit card journey, I've applied for 15+ cards, and the only way for me to keep a high velocity while maintaining a decent 524 status is by applying for business credit cards. Compared to personal cards, business cards have higher minimum spending requirements on average, and sometimes those stretch a little bit above what my normal non-rent spend would get me. So that's exactly where my rent purchases come into play. Is this a strategy I would recommend that you use all the time? No, not really, because you'll still be paying a 3% transaction fee by using another credit card to pay for your rent. And while Bilt did recently add in the ability to earn 1x back using a Visa, MasterCard, or Discover card, or 0.5x using an Amex card for rent through their portal specifically, you still pay that 3% fee, so the best option would be using the Bilt MasterCard no matter what. While I completely understand why some people think that my strategy is one you should never use at all, I'm completely fine with that trade-off of paying a 3% fee to hit an offer that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I don't know about you, but I'd much rather take a 3% haircut off of a 30% return on spend than only earn 1x with my Bilt MasterCard. When I do finally earn enough Bilt points to use, I use them exclusively with Hyatt. Why? Well, it's because Bilt is the only other currency alongside Chase that has that direct transfer access to Hyatt. And like I just got through explaining, I like using my Chase points through the portal for my domestic trips when it makes sense. So I think of my Bilt points as a way to access Hyatt still without having to dip into my stash of Ultimate Rewards points. I know some of y'all are probably thinking, why the heck do you care so much about Hyatt when their footprint is so tiny? And that's totally fair, but it really all comes down to point value. I already touched on this, but just as a quick example, comparing them with the other hotel chains. According to the points guy, the average value of a Hyatt point is 1.7, while with Marriott, you're looking at 0.7, with Hilton 0.6, and IHG 0.5. So we're talking about Hyatt points being worth 2.5 to 4 times more than any of the other big chains out there. So as somebody that mostly earns transferable currencies, the ability to get that kind of value for a hotel redemption is unheard of. Similarly to Chase, Bilt also has access to some really awesome international airline partners, and technically I could do much better by transferring to those, but those partners aren't competitive advantages that other ecosystems I earn in don't have, so that's why Hyatt is my default. The only other partner I've considered using my Bilt points for would be Alaska, because you can actually book American Airlines flights through Alaska's website thanks to the One World Alliance. And in the past, it was really nice that Bilt had direct transfer access to American, but they lost that partnership, and I'm hoping that's because Citi is going to take that over, but we'll see. But either way, I just don't have enough Bilt points laying around to use that method. However, if you're somebody that has really high rent or you use the Bilt card as your daily driver, it's definitely worth considering. The next points currency in my setup, and the one that I have way more points with than anybody else, is American Express membership rewards. Now, I know that a lot of y'all think that I hate American Express, but that's not true. I still use some of their cards and their points to fund a decent chunk of my travel. So far, I've applied for 3 MR point earning cards. The Amex Gold, which I got a killer bonus for back in the day of earning 90,000 points and $250 worth of statement credits for dining purchases. The Amex Business Gold, which I got an elevated 150,000 point offer for last year. And the Amex Blue Business Plus, which only had a 15,000 point welcome offer on it, but I do use it for its 2x back on miscellaneous business expenses, so I still earn a decent amount of points with it to this day. So those offers, plus my just daily spend, allowed me to accumulate a few 100,000 Amex MR points on my own, but a massive portion of my membership rewards points has come from, once again, referrals. I'm fortunate enough to be sitting on nearly 1 million Amex points alone right now, and that's just a mind-blowing number. But rest assured, even if I didn't have that many points, I would be trying to use my Amex points in the exact same way. Most of my points are reserved for international, business, or first-class flight redemptions, since that's where MR points shine. That being said, I don't travel internationally very much at all right now, so that's why my stockpile has gotten to the point that it's at. Occasionally, I will use my points in other methods, like if there's a really strong transfer bonus to somebody like Hilton, I might transfer some points out that way, like I did for the creator meetup back in 2023. But a new method that I've been loving has been transferring my Amex points to Hawaiian Airlines, converting those Hawaiian Airlines miles to Alaska miles, and then booking American Airlines flights through Alaska's website, like I mentioned earlier. That's a method that's probably not going to be around very much longer, so I'm taking advantage of it while I can, but I actually wouldn't have to use many of my MR points in this fashion if I just targeted getting those airlines specific credit cards, which I may or may not have done for my tax payments earlier this year. Just to rewind a second here, I want to be clear that I am not proud of the fact that I'm sitting on that many Amex membership rewards points. I actually kind of hate it. And that's exactly why I was targeting the Amex Business Platinum card so hard a couple months ago. With that card, I'd not only boost my cashback cent per point redemption rate to 1 cent per point through their business checking account, which I have, and that's how I would redeem more of my referral points, of course, but I would also get access to their 35% points rebate feature when booking travel through Amex's portal, which would give me a guaranteed 1.53 cent per point redemption rate through Amex's portal, which basically gives me another Chase Sapphire Reserve in a sense. Unfortunately, that did not pan out, so I'm still using my Chase points for all my domestic travel and then trying to reserve my Amex points for international travel. And another reason I'm doing that is also because my point earning potential with Amex right now is pretty dang low. The only MR point card I have left is the Amex Blue Business Plus, so while it does get a decent amount of my business spend, it's not enough to supplement a ton of travel. And I'm in pop-up jail for a lot of the elevated offers with Amex cards, so I'm kind of just at a loss until eventually I get out of that. But honestly, this situation doesn't stress me out at all because obviously I have way more points than I know what to do with, and I won't even be able to use those for a few years at this rate. And if for some reason I did start traveling internationally a lot more, well, I have other points currencies that could supplement that travel expense if I did run out of MR points. And the first one of those are Capital One Venture Miles. The only way I've ever earned Capital One miles is through my Venture X, and that for one came through its 75,000 point welcome offer. But I also earned roughly 30,000 points a year by putting my personal miscellaneous spend on that card. I talked about my thoughts on this ecosystem as a whole recently in my What's in My Wallet video, because part of me really wonders if I want to continue using my Venture X for that purpose while I have free alternatives, the Chase Freedom Unlimited and Amex Blue Business Plus, sitting on the backlines. The upside with that switch would be that I'd be earning in a points currency I value much higher than Capital One miles, but the downside would be that I have no Capital One earning potential. But I actually have an alternative that might be more appealing than both of those, and that would be getting something like the Alliant Visa Signature to earn 2.5% cash back on all my miscellaneous spend, since that would contribute a lot more to my hybrid approach that I want to implement better. To be totally honest, I've barely redeemed my Capital One miles for anything at this point. Like, I think I've used them for maybe 1 or 2 bookings. And even then, the redemption rate was pretty low, so nothing really exciting going on. But still, that doesn't necessarily mean that their points aren't worth earning. Similar to my Amex membership rewards points, I've kind of told myself that I could always just hold on to those points for some future international high-class redemption and it would all be worth it. But as the years continue to go by and I still don't utilize my Capital One miles, I'm thinking I'm kind of wasting my time. I have a feeling a lot of y'all are probably in the same boat, considering Capital One miles aren't necessarily known to be used for anything other than international travel, since they don't have much, if any, direct access to domestic partners. But there's one intriguing way that you can still use your Capital One miles for domestic flights, and it all goes back to utilizing those airline alliances like oneworld. If you're somebody that wants to book with one of the big domestic airlines like American Airlines, Delta, or United, and you don't have direct transfer access to them, you can instead take your transferable currencies and move them over to one of the international airlines that happens to be in the same alliance as one of those big companies. With American Airlines specifically, I've made 2 videos on the channel now about how you can use this method by either utilizing Hawaiian Airlines or British Airways or Qatar Airways. But outside of the One World Alliance, let's say that you needed access to United, well, you could transfer points to Air Canada's Aeroplan and book United flights through their website. So if you're like me and you have a ton of Capital One miles sitting around and you don't know how to use them, this could be a method that you consider. For me personally though, I have direct access to the airlines I fly the most with. And if not, I could also just use my Chase Sapphire Reserve through the portal to get a respectable redemption rate. So unless I find a redemption through the airline alliances that gives me a much higher cent per point value for the same exact flight, again, I just don't have a use case for my Capital One miles. To avoid them completely wasting away to inflation, I have been cashing out some of them through their point eraser tool for any travel purchases put on my Capital One Venture X. And while that isn't flashy, only giving me 1 cent per point, it at least puts them to use somewhat, and I've only redeemed, 30 or 40,000 points in that fashion, so it's nothing crazy. Now we come to my last transferable currency before getting into the airline and hotel specific programs I earn with, Citi ThankYou points. For a long time, I've viewed Citi ThankYou points in the exact same way that I view Capital One miles, and that's basically just as an afterthought, but recently that's changed. As has become obvious with the last few lenders I've covered, I have way too many credit card points sitting on the sideline unused, and over time, I've really come to hate that. Up until a few months ago, I would tell myself that it's completely fine to sit on this many points because eventually you'll use them for some crazy international flight and all of that would be worth it. But honestly, I think it's more beneficial to think of points like cash in a bank account. If you don't use them, over time they will lose value, whether that be to inflation, hotel or airline point devaluations, less award seats being available, you name it. And following the same analogy, with my cash, I would never let it sit in a checking account giving me 0.001% interest every year. Yet I do allow that to happen with points, but even worse because there's actually no interest at all. This is exactly what's pushed me further into that more hybrid strategy I've been talking about, where I'm much more open to redeeming my unused points for cash back if I don't have a plan for them. Citi ThankYou points were 5th on my priority list when it came to my transferable currencies. So with that being the case, I made the bold decision to redeem all of my Citi ThankYou points for cashback recently. I know that's going to sound crazy to some of you, but I'm honestly really happy with that decision, and here's why. This year, I've invested in thousands of dollars in new equipment for this YouTube channel, which hopefully you've been able to notice. And while yes, I could just pay for it all out of pocket and not worry about it, I realized I could also just offset a large chunk of those purchases with points like my Citi ThankYou points. Citi was my smallest stash at the time of 130,000 points, but even that covered $1,300 worth of the equipment that I bought, and that's not a bad return for points that were sitting there collecting dust. Doing so reminded me of the time that I redeemed those 215,000 plus points for this MacBook Pro that runs this entire YouTube channel, because that redemption wasn't flashy, but it literally helped me change my entire life and has helped me do YouTube full time today. In hindsight, a redemption like that, or maybe the one I've just made with my Citi ThankYou points, will return me much more value over time than any high cent per point travel redemption would. That's exactly why I think cent per point values are so highly overrated, not only because you could just inflate those values by booking on holiday weekends and stuff like that, but also because you shouldn't be remembering the cent per point value that you got 10 years down the line. What you should be remembering is the memories that you made with those points or the businesses you were able to start because of them. So yeah, this idea might not be super popular, but I think that your points are meant to be used and not hoarded. But I haven't always lived by that philosophy. So in making this small step by redeeming my Citi ThankYou points, I feel much better about the direction I'm headed. And hey, if I ever do regret this decision, which I doubt I ever will, I'll of course report that back to y'all so you can avoid making that same mistake. Another big reason I felt so comfortable redeeming some of my transferable currencies for cashback is because my application strategy has shifted. I've kind of put a pause on applying for transferable currency cards and instead have been applying for cards directly with the hotels and airlines that I want more points with. Everything here really kicked off for me when I went for the Southwest Companion Pass at the end of last year, which I now have until the end of 2026. I made a full video breaking down exactly why I went for that pass and how to get it, but the short version is this. I now have a buy one, get one free pass on every Southwest flight I do with my girlfriend, which is insanely valuable. Yes, Southwest has made some very disappointing changes to their program recently, but in all honesty, the value of the Southwest Companion Pass might actually go up, especially if the prices of the flights increase. Being based in Austin, Texas, Southwest is just the airline that I've always flown with, so that's why the Companion Pass was basically a mandatory. To get the Companion Pass, I applied for two cards, the Southwest Priority and the Performance Business cards, and earned over 130,000 miles for those welcome offers alone. Aside from getting the Companion Pass because of those offers, I also earned enough points to effectively cover most, if not all, of my Southwest flights for the next year or maybe even two, without even having to dip into my transferable currencies, specifically Chase. Unfortunately, I don't plan on earning really any more Southwest points anytime soon because their credit cards have pretty terrible earning rates on them. So for now, that stash that I earned from the welcome offers are what I'm considering being my Southwest travel bank until they're out. On the hotel side, the only points that I've earned directly are Marriott Bonvoy points thanks to my Marriott Boundless card. Right now, I really only use my Marriott points as like a tertiary option, I guess you would say, behind booking with Hyatt or by using like my $300 travel credit on my Capital One Venture X. But still, I built up a pretty decent stockpile of those points and have a 35,000 point free night certificate because of my Boundless every year. To be fair though, the only charge that ever goes on my Boundless card is my Spotify subscription just to keep it active. So until I add more Marriott cards to my setup, I don't expect to earn any more of their points either. The next card I do expect to apply for with them would be the Marriott Business Card in September of this year, since that's when I'm eligible to get it. And I do always have the option to upgrade my Boundless card to the Ritz-Carlton if I have a good use case for that 85,000 point free night certificate, but I don't see that happening until sometime next year. For the most part, with any Marriott, Hilton, or IHG bookings, I'm doing those through the Chase travel portal because of that 50% boost I get there. But that said, I still keep my eyes peeled for elevated offers on cards with those hotel currencies that are valued lower because that's kind of the best way to earn their points. The last program I've started leaning more directly into is American Airlines. Earlier, I mentioned a couple of different routes that you can use to book American Airlines flights with transferable currencies, but there's another approach that I may or may not have tested for my tax payments this year, and that is rather than relying on those workarounds, you could just go get credit cards with those airlines directly, like not only American Airlines cards, but Hawaiian and Alaska, for example. If I was approved for any of those cards, which you'll find out soon, that would mean that I wouldn't have to use any of my transferable currencies to book American Airlines flights for the foreseeable future. Whether or not this path actually works out, y'all will find out soon, but I'd strongly consider trying this method yourself, especially because those Hawaiian Airlines cards are expected to be discontinued any day now. One topic that we have not covered yet that is extremely important to this video is the idea of points diversity. So rather than me trying to quickly cover it in this one, especially considering how long this one has already gotten, I'll refer y'all to this in-depth video where I explain exactly why I'm comfortable earning in this many points currencies and spreading my spend out that thin. As always, Odin and I want to say thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and we'll catch you guys next time.